Hey everybody, welcome back. Hunt Club podcast, product briefing show. Familiar face if you've tuned in previous ones. What is this one? This is our third one together, Martin? Three of four,
Fourth, I
maybe?
think. I think this is the fourth.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, every
losing
time I
track
do
of.
one with you, it's like a drain on my life. So yeah, it could be the second or the third. It all just
No,
rolls
well,
into one.
this is like then it's the fourth round of insults and you challenging my intelligence, and it's fine. It's early here in Minneapolis in the morning, and it's a great way to start my day. Um, What are we talking about today? We're talking about metadata, right?
Yeah.
You're going to give us a kind of a, you and I had talked, I think, about, and there's been some other podcasts done on metadata from our peers that are fantastic. You should, if for the audience, tune into those as well. But this one, I want Martin to go a little bit deeper into use cases for metadata, especially in the Vectra AI platform. And yeah, I don't know, Martin, if you wanted to add any color commentary on that.
Yeah, so the previous podcast that Julian has done, ex-MDR analyst, I worked with Julian for many years. Worth watching, again, about the background, about the different metadata. So Julian goes on about the investigation and forensics, the threat hunting, and also the compliance and proactive posture. And also as well, Garode, he did one recently on the metadata, talking about how many metadata types there are,
Mhm.
etc. Again, it's definitely worth having a look at that. Too much information, especially when it comes to metadata, is the best information. And we'll talk about why I personally think that, and other analysts do, as we go on for the next however long it may be, Mark.
When we say metadata is a hot topic here. Obviously, we are big believers in the use of metadata, but just for our audience's sake, when we say metadata, how would you define that? Like what's the simplest way to describe what we mean when we say metadata?
So if you think raw data, that at the moment, Mark, myself, we're speaking to each other. This is being recorded. So this is going to last X amount of minutes. I said this, you said that, and we've got the full complex, details of what was spoken about, even down to, if this was to be edited, the pitch of my voice and all things like that. Even down to the color, in it.
Mhm.
That's raw data. Whereas when we talk about the metadata, we're talking about I talk to a particular computer on the network. My session lasts for this long. The protocol, the IP address, the service, as in SSH, HTTPS, or whatever, it contains that. So we don't have the raw data about the exact traffic that was sent, especially because, we're not looking at decryption here. Um,
Mhm.
so we're looking at things like the headers, things like in the HTTP, we're looking at user agents. We're looking at SSH, for example. We're looking at the clients. We're looking at the servers, things like that. So the metadata is kind of like if you see it as a very, very thinned out version of the raw data that's happened, and because it is a thinned out, version of the actual raw data, you know, its size is significantly less.
Mhm.
If you think about a PCAP, which I will give some examples shortly, if you think about a PCAP, I download a file from the internet, and that file is going to be 1 GB. So approximately, give or take, a couple of meg, that raw data is going to be about 1 GB. Whereas if it's metadata, that can be, as small as maybe 3, 4 lines, maybe 1, 2K, whatever it may be, because all we're looking at is my source, my destination, my ports, my protocol, how much data was downloaded over a particular time field.
Okay, great. So, and I
In
mean,
a
then,
in a
and
nutshell.
yeah, yeah, no, that's helpful in terms of like, I think you're going to get into some examples or some use cases of like how this manifests in our platform and top ways it can be used. Um, and I think when we were originally brainstorming this podcast, what was the last one we did? The power of something, didn't we? The power of
Zero to
God, what
hero API.
zero to hero API. Yeah, so
That
this is
one ran a
like
bit long, apparently,
yeah, well,
but hopefully it
no,
was
it was
good.
good. It was good. We I think deep technical. We could break it up into chapters. We could make it easy to consume for people. Um, Power of metadata. Let's talk about the power of metadata. You got some stuff queued up for us to kind of walk through.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully I'm going to share the right screen. Yep,
Are
you
you
should be able to
playing the
see.
role? You're playing the role of analyst,
Yep,
right?
analyst by heart. So I'm going to put myself now in, as many customers or those that don't necessarily, maybe it's security engineering, that don't work with the platform all the time. Don't be scared of the metadata. It's kind of like, oh, it's a big thing. Metadata is just effectively a log of what's happened, who has spoken to who, when they've spoken, and what was not necessarily in the details of what was transferred, but it gives you an indication about how, who, and why. So we're just going to look now, and this is Marketing Collab Server. It doesn't matter what host it is. This is just a random host that I picked that happens to have the highest urgency score, and it's a prioritized entity in the platform. Now we're going to look at this hidden tunnel because if we look at the events that have taken place on this host, it seems that we've got a port sweep, LDAP, recon, Kerberos, all things like that have happened a short while after this hidden tunnel. This could be benign activity. However, I know from the other hosts that are in this demo environment, that this is actually a malicious domain that was actually looked up where everything's happened from. So what we can do here is we can look at the hidden tunnel detection. And just down here, what a lot of people forget is we can investigate this host. So this is the host for 1 hour before and after the detection. So we can then go over into the instant investigation. So from here, we can look at the DNS queries for this external domain. So this is only going to be looking at things going out to, Google, well, anything external to our domain effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at the metadata, a lot of the time, and mainly I look at maybe DNS queries, I look at some SMB and things like that. There's lots and lots of things, the different metadata types that you should be focused on. And the different metadata types really, really does depend on what you're looking for. So for example, if we've got an internal host that's been compromised, maybe from an insider threat, okay, we're probably not going to necessarily be looking at the DNS queries because if it's an insider threat, it's happened from inside. So we're not going to maybe looking at specific things. However, we may find that it was being externally exfiltrated. The data was, to a
Mm-hmm.
particular domain or something. So therefore, depending on the investigation that we're doing, we may want to focus on DNS or whether it's RPC calls or whether it's remote desktop or whatever it may be. But in this case, we're going to look at the DNS queries. So for this DNS queries, we can see that from the 30th of May downwards, and again, this is the demo platform. What we can do from here is, though, we can investigate further and we can look into this more by selecting the investigate further. This is going to pre-populate because we're looking at DNS records. It's pre-populated everything for us. So we don't need to select any of the different data streams on here. And I will just emphasize, as Garode said on, I think it was in March on the podcast that he did, the network, we have 18 different metadata types. So that's 18 of them that are here. For the different AWS, the Azure, or the identity, and also the cloud, we've got 6 and also 2 metadata types. So 6 for identity and 2 for cloud. Now, if I was going to be looking for Azure AD and M365, but I was looking for network, this is obviously for cloud instances. So
Mm-hmm.
because we're looking at network, we're only going to look at this one. And I've lost all the or pre-populated fields here. But what I can do is here, I can then select this, add to query, and then put is. Oh, there we go. Just get rid of that extra one. And I'm just going to increase my time window here, and I'm going to put this to 14 days and then select search. So this is what this host has done, everything for the last 14 days. So we can see over the last 14 days, and it's actually still active now, 1306. Yep, last thing that came in was approximately 8 minutes ago. Obviously UTC, CET, the different time zones. Now, one thing that I would recommend to absolutely everyone is if you're doing an investigation and a forensics, metadata only has a certain amount of time that's actually in the platform for. Depending on your retention, it could be, a few days all the way up to a few weeks. And in this case, we do have 14 days. Download your metadata, sorry, download your metadata at the earliest time that you can, because once it's gone, it's gone. And I've noticed a number of times on customers where the Vectra Investigate or the metadata, especially for DNS, we actually have a longer retention period for
Hmm.
the DNS queries than a customer does actually have in their own environment. So in this case, if I suspected that this marketing collab server, was compromised, again, download all of this here. So we've now downloaded this and we've now got a copy of this, and we can put this into whether it be law enforcement, whether it be, even if it's just for training, we've got them locally now, so we can do off the box analysis. Again, it's better to have too much information than it is to
Hmm.
have too little, rather than sitting there thinking, oh, if only I downloaded this, just download as much as you can. Do remember maximum of 10,000 search results. If, for example, I was to remove this particular host that we've got here and do a search on this one now, this is now going to come up with 10,000 or more than 10,000 results. What we need to do is whenever we're doing any investigation, or even IOC or compliance, we need to look at the big picture. And so we're going to look at all IP addresses. Once we've then got, maybe an indicator, whether it's a source or whether it's a destination, or even if it's just a port number. In this case, this is all going to be port number 53. What we can then start doing is adding them, our filters, to our queries. Once we've added more and more filters, this will start bringing the number down. If the number still hasn't gone down and it's over 10,000, then what we should do is then reduce this down maybe to the last 12 hours. Or in this case, because we know that this host had an incident on the 30th of May, then what we could then do is actually put this, and I'll talk slowly just while this loads up. What we can then do is select our time here. And once we've got our time, we can put this to an absolute just here, or custom time range, and we can select, for example, the 30th of May here and here, so we can have the full 24 hours of just this particular host. Now, it's worth me pointing out here that this is just the DNS records.
Hmm.
Okay, so this is focusing in on things like port 53. This is focusing in on, I don't know what goes on, but, under the hood explicitly about what actually defines this as a DNS record. It will be for things like 53, the query types that are observed in here. But do remember, and I'm a sinner for this as well, that sometimes I can get really, really down into an investigation. And I can put on here, for example, ID RESP. So this is the destination port. So if I was to put in here ID RESP 22, for example, because now I want to investigate SSH activity, I'll sit there, click search, and I'll have no results on here at all, because DNS runs over port 53. Okay, it's when you look at this and say, well, I knew I had something there a short while ago. What I do in this instance is review all of the filters you've put in here. And what I would then do is here, maybe look for iSession because it's port 22. And I'm now going to look at any activity coming from anywhere in the network with the destination of port 22 on here. Okay, there's a lot of things that I could speak to. I could speak to you all day long. And the people watching this about metadata, the investigations, and how to do things. But one of my top tips is investigate maybe things that in a peacetime, there's not an incident going on. Understand maybe of what you as a user have done, in your environment. You know what time you've logged on. You know what DNS lookups you've done. And what's really interesting is, because I've done this many times on the Vectra platform, you know, you log onto your computer and you do certain things. I've looked at the DNS requests, and any security analyst has probably, seen this as well. The number of DNS requests that go on in the background of you just turning your computer on, and doing naught to Google in 5 seconds, first thing in the morning. There's so much stuff that actually happens, but it's actually establishing what's normal and what's not normal.
Hmm.
If we're seeing repetitive failures, repetitive things, repetitive DNS lookups, ask yourselves why these particular things are happening. And again, on here, we can see that we've got, on this particular host here, there's an SSH connection, that's pretty much established like permanently all the way through. But we've got resets on here, but we've got S1. So what actually are these? What's this host actually doing? What is this target host that we can see? and what is this source host. Again, this could be down to an investigation, this could be down to maybe compliance, or just doing some threat hunting. I had a meeting with a customer yesterday afternoon, it was, and just stumbled across an IP address that I didn't recognize in their environment. So we looked at the metadata, saw what it was, which they're looking at it now. It doesn't perceive as a threat, but it's more about a compliance thing,
Yeah.
about why something is looking over port 1900 UDP and it appears to be a Windows XP machine. So why is there a Windows XP machine in their environment? When they're all, well, I think they've just about rolled out to Windows 11 now. Windows XP is, gone.
Yeah.
That's well, hopefully it's gone. I still say it's the best operating system though, Mark. Yeah, yeah.
Well, you're old school.
Well, yeah, well,
I'm
kind
just
of.
kidding.
Yeah, yeah, I'm joking. Yeah, so with the metadata that we've got here, again, we've got 317 results for all sources, all destinations over port 22 on here over a 24-hour period. Remember, when you're looking at the metadata, there's also other fields in here as well, that may be, of significance. Now, looking at the edit columns on here, we can see the connection state and the sensor UID. If we then edit the columns on here and we scroll down and we can see the application, we can see the source, the destination, if it's locally originating, and if it's locally destination or the local response. We can see the protocol on here. There's lots and lots we can see. But you will notice that there's a couple of things kind of like missing on here that would be additional. Again, this is in the metadata itself. So we can see on here the protocol 6, there's no application on here. You will not always get fields that are populated with all of the different metadata types when you're looking at iSession. However, if I was to now look at the data stream of SSH, because we're looking at port 22, so technically I don't need to have this destination port 22 on here. So let's just click search on here and let's see if we can find some interesting things. You notice that our other columns have disappeared on here. So I've just refreshed the page. It's my Mac. There we go. So we're on SSH destination port 22. So we've got the originating host of 154 on here. So this would actually indicate that this is coming outbound to inbound that we can see because we've got the originating host or the source IP for the destination IP that we can see. You notice it doesn't speak about the destination port number by default here because destination port by default is port 22. Now we can see we've got 122 results here. So if I just clear this one and then click search, this may or may not yield different results on here. But remember, this is our entire network. So we've now seen something quite interesting. I've got a really, really quick think on my head here. So that's 38 extra. So that was 38 extra connections that were made with SSH that were not over port 22. So if we just add a filter on here and we put ID recipe is not port 22, okay, and then click search. This is now going to show us all activity that's happening over SSH that's not over port 22. And just to confirm that one, if I go edit columns and I go to what we can do is here we can invite some more stuff. We can look at the client, we can look at the server, and what else can we look at? And we can look at the recipe as well. So this is the destination port. So now we're going to bring in the destination port and see these non-standard port 22 in our environment. And we can see that someone's doing SSH over port 8022. This may be expected, it may be authorized, it may be standard in an environment. Within my environment at home, I don't SSH always over port 22, depending on what server I'm using. And again, a lot of people, a lot of organizations choose to do it that way. But we can also look for the clients, we can look for the server as well. Now let's just move this on now into a bit of threat hunting, or maybe even some compliance. This particular OpenSSH version may not be authorized, okay? Or this particular, this Debian version that we can see here, again, this may not be authorized. It may not be, a massive threat to our environment, but everything should be kept to a standard.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do see servers or clients that aren't necessary to compliance, is this a rogue device? Is it unauthorized? Is it a machine
Right.
that's just been pulled out, the broom cupboard or something and started to be used? So yeah, always look at what you're looking for. Make sure you've got the right metadata stream. And again, once you've got the right metadata stream, it's not unlikely that you are going to get tens of thousands of results. So once you've found something, then tune in on maybe sources, destinations, and actually pull out the information. And when you download the information via CSV, always add as many columns as you think are actually relevant to this one. Because again, I can't emphasize, once that metadata's gone, it's gone. Okay.
Now,
I can
once you
cover
do come
forever.
across, like when you come across something, right? So here you're poking around and you're like, oh, I noticed this is odd or this is against policy. May not be bad, may not be malicious, may just be who knows what's going on. And we've heard these stories before. Oh, they're just running testing, right? And that's messing up the, so that's normal. Glad you alerted us of it, but it's not malicious in nature. Now, once you do like come across things like this, like policy violations or whatever it might be, I see the save query. Can the analyst then save this and say, hey, I want to run this periodically so they don't have to go through all of these steps and constantly, they're not necessarily hunting for problems or like this is a known thing that keeps coming up. I'm going to save this query and run it against the metadata every, I don't know, 7 days or 10 days or whatever it might be.
Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to populate this now with just a load of kind of like stuff, just to show you how you can build these queries out as big as you want, or these filters that we've got here. And again, I'll put on here, just add to query and then is. So for example, this may be a particular server that's being used, for a short space of time. It could be for any reason whatsoever, or this could be maybe for some IOCs. It could be, you need to check how many people are doing lookups for Facebook or YouTube, whatever it may be. So what we can do here is we can save our query. And in this case, we can save the query as, as a personalized name. So Martin demo on here. Now, here we've got the option to save this as a private query or save it as a public. And when I say public, I don't mean, just some random person, on the internet can look at this. This is obviously authorized users of the Vectra platform, meaning that if I was to do a query maybe for some HR incident, and I'm investigating a particular user, what they've done over a particular time, there's lots and lots of use cases as to why, why you may want to save it as a private query.
Hmm.
But in this case, I'm going to leave this as a public one. So I'm going to put this as a save, and now this is going to save it as Martin demo. Just click on the banner just to get rid of it. So Martin demo. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to now save this query again, and I'm going to save this as a new one, but I'm going to save this as a query, and I might want to put this as Martin HR incident. Okay. If I now save this as a private query, no one is going to be able to see this one in our Vectra environment. So no other users are going to be able to see this one. Only I am going to be able to see this. Again, I would encourage everyone, if you are going to do something of a very, very sensitive nature, although we may all work in the same security teams and things, especially for things like HR incidents or, or even law enforcement incidents, always save it as a private, so you're not giving away, information to other people. Now, what I'll do now is, though, I'm just going to close this one, and you'll
Well, one, one
notice.
one
Oh,
question
yes,
for you,
so
Martin.
yep,
If
yep,
you save it as a public query,
yep.
can any authorized user of the platform edit that query?
What we'll do is we will just go into here then, and then we'll look at one that was saved here, and that was created. Let's look at the one that Garo created on November the 7th. So if I now look at this one, self-signed certs on our network, looking at the X509 data stream, to you, Mark, this is about certificates and things that you do on the internet when you access it and the different encryptions and things. So
I
now
knew
I've
that.
got this. So now I've got this one on here. I may want to add maybe a filter on this one and then say, let's look for something. In fact, they're all the same on here. But what I may want to do is just put this one. I'm just going to add another query on here and put is. So now what I'm going to do is save this query. Okay, now I can save this as a new right? Because this is owned by Garode, so Garode would,
Okay.
you know, be a bit annoyed if I started editing his things. So what I'll do is now save this as new, and I'm just going to put this one as demo self certs. There we go, and I can't spell that. There we go. Yeah, demo self certs, and I'll save this one, and there we go. It's saved successfully. So now when I go back into the investigate, we'll be able to see on here that we got the self-signed certs on here, but we can open the saved queries that have been previously saved. So if I just type the word cert in here, okay, and press enter, and we've got demo self certs, and we got the one that Gero
Hmm.
and also that Julian made previously as well. So the
Well, you can
answer to your
almost
question is
you can
yes.
almost create, yeah, you can almost create templates, if you will, that people just then
Add on,
copy the
yeah.
template and add onto it, and whether it's for compliance, whether it's for whatever it might be.
Yeah,
Cool.
and you will notice as well that if I wanted to, really annoy Julian, I can't delete this one because it can only be deleted by its creator, as in Julian. So I can get Julian's what the search that he made, and then I can adapt onto that, like you said. Basically, Julian created a template, and then I add or take away things to it. And the same as Julian will not be able to edit mine without saving a new one, etc., etc. But what I'll do is I'll just delete this one just to show people how to delete as well.
Sure. Cool.
There we
Did
go.
we just did we just bleed into our next podcast, which was on search? Did I just force you into the search one?
We can, well, I lost control of it then, Mark. I lost control of it. Yeah. Now we can carry on with the search now. So you can either split this up and I could say goodbye to everyone and hello to everyone again. Yeah.
I think what are we, 30 minutes in? No, we're like 20 something minutes in. Let's save that one. Let's save that one for our next episode,
Yeah.
our next show. Because like, there's a ton we can do with search, not only saving them, but then there's a bunch of cool new features and functionality in search that I think it's due its own time.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely.
all right, okay, Martin, one last question for you to kind of wrap this up. You said three top use cases of Vectra AI metadata in the platform. What were the three?
So for me, and it's kind of like ingrained into all of us, but not because of the company. We're not told to say this. It is investigation and forensics. That's the first one. You come along to the platform, you see a detection that's happened, and you want to gather more information. Who has that host spoke to during, in, and around this? What DNS lookups did they do, etc. The other one is threat hunting. And a lot of people forget we did speak about threat intelligence feeds on our second to last one, I think it was. So we've got a load of IOCs, IP addresses, domains, etc. We put them into the platform and we kind of like sit back and waiting for these detections, hopefully not to come in. What about looking for things that have happened maybe a day, a week, retention period ago? Because as I said earlier, a lot of customers, they don't have a massive retention period for their DNS logs. A lot of customers, in the financial, they may do, but they may have to jump through a lot of hoops to actually access these logs. So looking at the, you get given some IP addresses, whether it's compromised IPs on the internet. Look at what's happened previously as much as you can, as well as adapting the platform to look forward, to raise detections for IOCs being in the form of threat intelligence feeds. And finally, as well, there's the compliance and there's the proactive posture as well.
Mhm.
Now, for the compliance and proactive posture, for some people, when you talk about compliance, this is somebody else's job. And a kind of like yawn thing, that's, the world of compliance isn't everyone's cup of tea. However, when we're looking at certain things, whether it be or proactive posture, let's take that one as an example. Um, why would certain hosts be doing reverse lookups to Google to do reverse lookups to internal hosts? Why would Google know that the IP address of yours, Mark, is called Mark_laptop? I would be very, very concerned if Google did know that. If that is the case, that you're doing, tens of thousands or even billions of reverse lookups. Think about the metadata. Think about all of the PCAPs. Think about all of the network bandwidth that we're using that is completely unnecessary, just because somebody may have actually done a misconfiguration. So the answer to your question, Mark, investigation and forensics, threat hunting and compliance and proactive, posture, actual monitoring. Those are the three keys that I know that Gerode and also Julian has spoken about, because for me, that's that they are the most important things, and that's what I use on a day-to-day basis, the metadata for, because that's the best use cases for it.
Awesome. I think that you just took us full circle, because at first I was looking back at our episodes. Was the first one we did event detection versus entity prioritization?
It was, yeah.
Was that?
Yep. Yep.
And that was all about, hey, sending a super accurate signal, prioritized signal alert to the SOC analyst, and so they have less alerts to deal with. So their reactive workload down.
Yep.
And that is all about use the word proactive, right? As Gardner uses the word preemptive, proactive, whatever. That's where you get into like posture improvements and hunting and compliance and kind of shifting the workload from constantly reacting to what may or may not be a threat to balancing out with some proactive activity. And that's where we can get into search too, because search, I think, will touch on not only its use cases reactively, but also in an investigation, but also proactively in terms of posture and policy compliance and those sorts of things. Awesome.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts or rips on me before we
no, not for you.
No,
but for my closing thoughts, for everyone that's listening to this, practice looking at the metadata. Have a look at the different fields, have a look at the different data streams, the different metadata types. Think about what you're looking at, think about what's normal, think about what's not normal. And we will go into some of the searches, very shortly about what's not normal. We may find things, we may not find things. And remember, this is the demo platform. But practice. A lot of people say this sounds doomsday, but practice. For the event, of like your busiest day of your working career, that it will just go seamlessly. That you can just go into the platform and pull things. Every day is a school day. However, practice. They're my final words for this podcast, anyway.
Fantastic advice for everyone, Martin, including myself. So appreciate that. Thanks again for coming on. We are going to do search in our next episode, everybody. So tune back in. We appreciate your time. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Cheers,
everybody.
Bye-bye.
See ya.